You probably didn't notice it at first. That one object in your house that seems harmless, quiet, still, maybe even a little sweet. You pass by it every day. It doesn't move, it doesn't do anything. But somehow, it feels like it remembers something you don't. There's a reason some people say certain objects hold energy. And dolls were never just toys. They were made to carry things, names that got lost, feelings that didn't get buried deep enough, stories that never got to end. Some say it's just imagination. Others, especially in old folklore, say it's a kind of invitation, not for spirits exactly, but for energy that looks for a face and finds yours instead. Ever walked past something in your own house and felt like it noticed you? Not fear, not chills, just that tiny shift in the air. Like the room had a pause you didn't ask for. For Ellen, it was a doll on a shelf. Old cloth, button eyes, hand-sewn mouth. It wasn't scary. In fact, it was kinda sweet. The kind of thing you'd see in an antique shop window and smile at. But here's the part she didn't tell anyone. Every time she walked by, she'd glance at it and then check behind her. Not on purpose, not out of fear, more like a reflex, like something in her said, "Make sure you're still alone." It didn't move, it didn't blink. But it was never just a decoration after that, and she never moved it. That shelf stayed exactly the same for months, almost like part of her didn't want to disturb it, didn't want to wake whatever made it feel that way. She didn't say that out loud, of course. She just started avoiding that side of the room, and that's how it begins. Not with a scream or a shadow, but with a soft shift you keep ignoring. Until the energy gets louder than your logic. Ellen picked up the doll at a flea market just outside Montpelier. 10 in the morning, sun out, coffee in hand. It was sitting in a wire basket next to some old glass bottles and a rusted teapot. The seller said it was handmade. Belonged to her great-aunt, maybe older, still in good shape, $5. Ellen smiled, held it up, said, "This is cute. It'll look great on the shelf next to the books." She brought it home, dusted it off, and placed it up high, right where the sun hit it in the afternoon. It looked perfect. Warm, quiet, vintage. But within a week, the energy shifted. Her cat, who always napped on the rug in that room, stopped walking in altogether, just stood at the doorway, stared, and turned back. Every time, Ellen started feeling heavy in that space, not tired, not sick. Just like she was being held in place. And then came the dreams. Same one over and over. A porch swing, a gray sky, and someone sitting in a chair that used to be in her childhood bedroom. Rocking slowly, no face, no voice. Just movement. She woke up at 3:17 a.m. 3 nights in a row. Same minute, same feeling, like something had returned and wanted her to remember. That's when she stopped calling it a decoration and started wondering what else came home with it. Ellen wasn't scared, not in the way movies make you think fear looks. She didn't scream, didn't run, didn't even talk about it to her friends. What she felt was harder to name. It was this strange weight, like walking into a memory that wasn't hers, and being expected to stay a while. She saged the house twice. She opened the windows. She rearranged the shelf just to convince herself it was all in her head. But nothing cleared. The room didn't feel bad. It just felt occupied, like something in the air was waiting, like the silence in there had company. And deeper than that, was this feeling that she was being watched, not out of malice, but out of longing, as if the doll missed someone and had quietly decided Ellen might be enough. That's what shook her the most, not the dream, not the timing, but the possibility that something was grieving inside her home, and it had chosen her as the new anchor. It's kinda like hanging a photo of someone you've never met. You don't know the story, you just like the frame. It fills a blank wall, makes the space feel thoughtful. But slowly, the room starts to shift. You pause when you pass it. Not because you're afraid, but because something feels remembered. That's what the doll did. It didn't move, it didn't speak, but it held a presence like someone had just stepped out of the room. Or maybe never left. The shelf became more than a shelf. It became a seat for something unspoken, a placeholder for a story that hadn't ended cleanly. And Ellen felt it, not with logic, but with that quiet gut knowing anyone who's lived through grief or transition can recognize. The sense that something is still sitting in your house because it never got a proper goodbye, and the question stopped being, is it haunted? It became, is this mine to hold? Some objects hold on to energy the same way skin holds on to scent. Not because they want to, but because no one showed them how to let go. Energy workers call them emotional vessels, but you don't need a title to know what it feels like. You've walked into a room that made your shoulders tense for no reason. You've touched an old book or jacket and suddenly thought of someone long gone. It's not magic, it's memory with weight. Dolls, especially handmade ones, are shaped like people. They have faces, eyes, hands. They get hugged, cried on, whispered to. And when they're left behind, they don't just sit, they keep. Feng Shui calls them anchors of Kai. Witchcraft calls them vessels. Old folks just said, some things remember too much. Whatever the name, the message is the same. If something in your house feels louder than it should, maybe it's still holding a story, and maybe that story isn't yours. Ellen didn't want to throw it in the trash. It felt wrong, like tossing away a name you never learned, so she wrapped it in white cloth, placed it beside lavender and sea salt under moonlight, and left it there for a full cycle. The next morning, she wrote a note. Thank you for what you carried. This home is ready for something lighter. She sealed the doll in a box and donated it to a charity 2 towns over. No fear, no ritual, just clarity. If you've got dolls, plushies, or anything shaped like a human in your space, here's how to keep your energy clean. Know the origin. If it's old, thrifted, or handed down, assume it carries something. Avoid placement near beds, doors, or mirrors. These are energetic amplifiers. Don't let a vessel sit at a gateway. Don't place them in direct eye line. If you see it every time you pass, it's watching too. Cleanse physically and energetically. Saltwater cloth, smoke, stones like obsidian or black tourmaline. Keep only what feels quiet. Too many figures equals too many stories, and your home can't hold what your heart doesn't understand. Some stuffed animals feel like comfort. Others feel like something else entirely. It's not in the fur or the eyes, it's in the stillness. That weird kind of silence that feels like it's not yours. Jessica never liked stuffed animals, not really. But after her divorce, she moved in with her sister for a while. And one day, her niece handed her a bear. Small, beige, worn at the ears. I don't play with it anymore, the girl said, but you looked like you needed something to hug. Jessica smiled, said thank you, and set it on her nightstand. She didn't plan to keep it, but something about it felt kind, like it had seen a lot, like it knew what loss was, so she let it stay. That first week, she started sleeping a little better. The room felt warm, grounded, like someone was sitting beside her, holding space. But by week 3, the dreams started. She was back in her childhood bedroom. The bed was smaller. The wallpaper was wrong. Too yellow, like something had aged without her. And there was always something at the foot of the bed, small, still, watching. It never moved, but it was always there. And she always woke up just before it did. And she told herself it was just grief. A leftover feeling still untangling itself from her body. But one night, her niece came into the room, took one look at the bear, and asked, "Why is it on the bed again?" And I thought we left it in the closet. Jessica froze. She hadn't put it on the bed, not once. Sometimes energy doesn't come from what you buy, it comes from what you accept, what you let sit close without asking where it's been. The truth is, stuffed animals, especially ones that were deeply loved, don't just hold dust, they hold memory, they hold comfort. And sometimes, if the comfort isn't yours, you start to feel like you're living in someone else's healing. They're not haunted, but they are charged with tears, with lullabies, with stories that ended too early. And if your house is already in a vulnerable place, recent grief, heartbreak, illness, change, those energies latch on quietly, not to hurt you, but to finish what they started. When it comes to stuffed animals, there's something else to know. The shape matters. When something's shaped like a being, it becomes a stand-in for presence. And in Feng Shui, that presence anchors Kai. If that presence wasn't cleared, neither is the energy it holds. Jessica wrapped the bear in a cloth bag and sat with it for a few minutes. She said, "I'm grateful for whatever comfort you gave her, but I'm not the one you were meant for." Then she placed it in a sealed wooden box with a piece of black tourmaline. She stored it away. Not to forget it, but to give it space. And the dreams stopped. If you've got a toy, doll, or figure you didn't choose, ask why it's still there. Ask who it's still comforting, and whether that story still needs to live in your home. Some toys were never designed to be played with, just displayed, staring outward, quietly holding space like they were waiting for someone to walk by. Mark didn't believe in energy, didn't care for crystals, feng shui, or vibes. He liked things simple, sharp corners, clean shelves, minimal fuss, but after his dad passed, he kept one item from the house, an old wind-up monkey toy. Rusty symbols, glassy plastic eyes, the kind that clicks and jerks and claps when you turn the key. He didn't even know why he took it. It just sat on a shelf above the hallway cabinet, facing the front door, outward, always looking. He never touched it, never wounded it, but every so often, he'd walk in the house and feel like something was off, like the room had shifted slightly. Even though nothing had moved, one night he came home late, rain, groceries. The house was dark, and when he flipped on the light, the monkey's head was turned, not tilted, turned, facing the kitchen now, still staring. He laughed it off, told himself he must have bumped it, but the weirdest part, he started avoiding that hallway after dark. And when a friend came over and asked, "Dude, why is that thing just facing the door like that?" Mark said without thinking, "I don't know, it's always been that way. I've always. Some things don't carry energy, they direct it." Feng Shui talks about movement, about Kai needing direction, balance, purpose. But when an object is shaped like a being and it's always facing outward, it becomes more than just decor. It becomes a lookout, a sentinel, a thing that holds your home in a frozen kind of watchfulness, especially when it's placed at an entry point. A door, a hallway, a mirror. That's not just placement, that's permission. The toy never looked in, only out, and the energy in that hallway, it never settled, it just paced. And pacing energy does something strange to people. You don't relax fully, you don't breathe deep. You find yourself skipping over certain spots in your own home, like they're someone else's square of air. Mark didn't throw the toy away. He turned it to face the wall for 3 days, nothing dramatic, no ritual. He just wanted to see how the room felt, and it changed. The air stopped holding its breath. The hallway stopped watching. He placed it in a box and stored it on a lower shelf, facing nothing, letting it rest. If you've got a toy, doll, or figurine that always faces out, check where it's pointed, check what it sees all day. Ask yourself if this thing is standing watch. What exactly is it watching for? Don't let your home stay on alert for something that's no longer coming back. Some spaces in the house feel like they breathe. not because of airflow or AC vents, but because they hold too many things that still remember how to exhale. For Claire, it was a shelf in the hallway. Not big, not dramatic, just 3 levels of polished oak tucked between 2 doorways. She used it to hold memories. Little bits of her childhood, her parents' house, a few keepsakes she wasn't ready to let go. There was a small porcelain horse from her grandmother's bedroom, a faded music box that never played right, a tiny figurine from her mom's old nativity set, and a set of nesting dolls that no one could open anymore. The smallest one stuck shut, like it refused to be the last in line. It looked lovely, balanced, sentimental until it didn't. Claire started noticing the hallway felt full, not cluttered, just occupied, like someone had stepped into it right before her. But never made a sound. She'd pause before walking past it at night, not out of fear. Just that subtle sense that she was interrupting something that had already begun. And one morning, while dusting, she found the smallest nesting doll on the floor, face down. Far from the shelf, she lived alone, and the shelf hadn't been bumped. That's when she realized every item on that shelf belonged to someone else. Every single piece had been held, loved, cried over, or prayed with by hands that were no longer around. It wasn't just sentimental, it was saturated. Feng Shui says open shelves are lungs. They breathe in and out the energy of what they hold. But when the objects themselves carry stories that haven't fully closed, those stories don't rest. They circulate, and when a shelf holds too many unresolved stories, the house starts to mimic the breath patterns of grief. Shallow, uneven, always reaching. Claire didn't want to let go of the memories. But she started to wonder if she had created an altar by accident. One not for worship, but for never-ending presence. The shelf wasn't heavy with dust, it was heavy with memory. And she could feel it every time she walked past. A space that was no longer neutral. Claire didn't throw everything away. She chose 3 objects that still brought peace when she touched them. The rest she wrapped in cloth, placed in a cedar box with a handwritten line, "Thank you, you don't have to stay here anymore." She let the shelf breathe again, not through nostalgia, but through space, and the hallway got quiet. If you've got a shelf that holds too much history, clean it not just for dust, but for energy. Ask yourself, does this shelf reflect the life I'm building, or is it echoing something I was never meant to carry forever? Some sounds are supposed to end. That's what makes them comforting. They start, they soothe, they stop. But what happens when they do? Melissa had always liked quiet, not silence, just stillness. A little hallway lamp, a low hum from the fridge. She lived alone and liked it that way. One night around 2:13 a.m., she woke up to something soft, distant. It sounded like a lullaby. Not a full song, just a few notes repeating themselves over and over. She thought it was a neighbor's phone, or maybe a TV left on somewhere upstairs. But when she sat up and listened, it got clearer, more familiar, and just before it faded, she heard a faint click, like something winding down. She didn't own anything that made that sound. That was the first night. It didn't happen every night, just often enough to make her start leaving the hallway light on. She checked her windows, checked under furniture. She even pulled apart old boxes from her last move, half laughing to herself, saying, "What am I even looking for?" But she never found anything. Until one afternoon, while digging through an old tote bag she hadn't touched since her grandmother's funeral, she felt something small wrapped in fabric. She unwrapped it slowly, a silver music box, faded, scratched, when she turned the tiny key at the back. That same tune played, off-key, slow, exactly the way it had echoed through her hallway. She didn't remember packing it. Didn't even know it had belonged to her grandmother. But the sound. Her body already knew it. Some things don't just play sound, they carry unfinished rhythms. In Feng Shui, sound is a mover of Kai. It wakes up energy, it stirs rooms. It opens what's been closed, but not all sounds bring movement forward. Some loop. And if the object playing that sound is tied to grief or memory or something left open, the loop becomes a trap. Your body hears it even when your ears don't. Your space starts holding its breath, waiting for a song to end that never quite does. Melissa didn't want to throw it away, so she cleared her table, placed the music box in the center, and sat with it in silence. She didn't light sage, didn't chant, she just whispered, "If you've been waiting for someone to hear you, I'm here now, you can rest." Then she wrapped it in dark blue cloth, set it in a wooden drawer, and never wound it again. The song never returned. If there's something in your home that plays by itself, that hums, chimes, sings even softly, ask yourself, is it trying to bring comfort? Or is it trying to finish something that never got to end?